The long-awaited elections have been held in Ferguson, Missouri. Some new and veteran faces are in charge of the city council. But this morning I received a tweet from our next guest who has been around this community for some time, covering, listening to the residents, also those who live in the area. And he wrote me that the national media is getting this Ferguson vote story all wrong. So we're digging in. Welcome back to Midpoint, the co-host of The McGraw Show on the Big 550 KTRS in St. Louis, Missouri. Weekday mornings, 6 to 10 Central Time. McGraw Millhaven joins us. McGraw, good to see you again. Now, what's got you all excited here about, and also basically pointing out that somebody's getting it wrong?
Ed, thank you very much for the invite, and I guess social media works, so get everybody to sign you up on your Twitter account.
There you go.
So the national media and the national story is that the turnout doubled. 30% of the voters went out to vote, which is fine, and that now the city council has two more African-American city councilmen on it, which means now it's 50-50. And the sense is like, hey, this is great news. But the real story, and you don't have to dig very deep, is that two candidates who were protester supported, right? So the protesters, if you will, had the backing. These two, I should say.
They were basically activist candidates, if you will.
The activist candidates, yes, who had the backing of the protesters. Both of those people lost. So the protesters, in all of their Get Out to Vote campaign and we're going to take back the city, the two protester-supported candidates lost, and lost big. So the people who came to the polls were not supporting the protesters. And in one of those instances, Wesley Bell, who now is a member of the Ferguson City Council, who happens to be African American, is also now let me get this straight. He is now the elected city council member of Ferguson. He is also a judge in a neighboring town, Velda City, which, oh, by the way, is now under federal investigation for illegally setting bails. He's the Muni Court judge. He is also, according to his LinkedIn page, a prosecutor in a town on the river called Riverview Gardens.
So according to what you're saying and what you're finding out now, and again, we have to verify this, so do you as well, we have to look into this, that Wesley Bell had the backing of several current council members, who was one of the two African-American candidates there, technically has jobs in government in other towns and other cities around the region, correct?
That is correct. So one of the arguments about Ferguson was that these judges are prosecutors and judges and mayors and police chiefs in other towns, and that's one of the bigger problems. And that's what the Justice Department said, that was a major problem going forward. Well, the Velda City Municipal Court judge was just elected to the City Council of Ferguson. So he's passing laws in Ferguson and judging people in Velda City.
It is going to be interesting. And again, you're bringing this to our attention here. We have to check it out. I'm sure you guys are looking at it as well to make sure and verify a lot of this information. It is interesting if indeed this is what happens. With about a minute left, would it not, though, indicate that turning down the activist candidates and bringing people in like the former mayor, who now is on the city council, people there know that in their own community, they have the people who will be able to fix this and make it right. They didn't need anybody from the outside.
Well, I think it says, one, that the protesters and the people who are making the biggest stink weren't from Ferguson. And two, I think you have to question these protesters. How much juice do they really have at the polls? They couldn't get their people to the polls. Yes, the vote doubled. 30% of the people went to the polls as opposed to 12% of the people went to the polls. But it wasn't the protest vote. The protest vote failed, and it failed miserably.
There you go. So we have to now follow up on this. I'm sure you will as well. We'll find out what happens in Ferguson because, as you pointed out, sometimes some members of the national media never really dig into the story. But I'm glad you did. And yes, social media does work. McGraw Millhaven, the Big 550 KTRS in St. Louis, Missouri, weekday morning, 6 to 10 a.m. Central Time. McGraw, we'll follow this. We'll catch up with you. Thanks for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, take care. We are following the developing news out of Boston, where there apparently has been a verdict reached in the Boston Marathon bombing trial of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. We are waiting for that to be read. We will then bring in our legal experts. We'll talk about it because as late as today, I should say, some people were saying that this verdict might take days to come to a decision on. We'll bring you that and a whole lot more when Midpoint continues.